Hi, I'm Amy, and this video is about how I'm teaching hymns and folk songs to my Charlotte Mason homeschool students. So I really enjoy music. I like to sing, and I grew up in a family that sang a lot. Not formally or professionally, but just having fun. We would make up songs and sing songs we knew together, and it was just a big part of our family culture. But something I've noticed as my kids have been growing up is they never seemed quite that into music. They just didn't seem to sing a lot. So I tried to incorporate hymns and folk songs into my morning time with my young children. But this really didn't stick. They were just more interested in watching a YouTube video of people singing than they were in actually singing themselves. So I knew when we came around to starting formal lessons that I needed to switch things up and I needed to find something else that would work to help get my kids singing. So, something I've noticed is that if I really want my kids to learn something, sometimes the best thing to do is to try and teach it to a different kid. So, in this case, instead of trying to keep on getting my older two kids to sing, I started paying a little bit more attention to my toddler. And over the autumn, he really took to nursery rhymes and he started reciting them over and over again in his little toddler voice. And pretty soon, I noticed that my older kids were starting to really get into nursery rhymes too. They had a lot more memorized than I realized, and they would go around really enjoying repeating the nursery rhymes and talking about them. And it wasn't much of a jump from there to singing actual songs that we were learning and listening to around the house. So that was something really helpful, is just getting into nursery rhymes as a precursor to singing. And the sing song and the rhythm of nursery rhymes was really helpful for us there. So what has ended up working for us? So they were starting to sing a little bit and do these nursery rhymes. And so I was ready to try something different besides what we'd been doing. What ended up working well for us is that over Advent, I bought an MP3 album of Christmas music. During our morning time, I would repeat the verse out to them and they would repeat it back to me. And we would do that once or twice, and then we would listen to the song. And then all I would say is jump in where you know the words. And I would sing along with the music, and the boys would be able to jump in where they knew the words. So this really helped. First of all, not having a screen up was super helpful for my kids because they kept getting distracted by that. And then, second of all, it gave me something to sing along with to demonstrate how you actually sing in chorus with another person. So it was really helpful to have something to sing along to. And I don't play a guitar or a piano or anything that you can really sing with. So having that music playing on a little speaker was really helpful for us. So a lot of times as we were doing this, it would only really be me singing. But the thing is that after we were done with morning time, after we wrapped up that part of our day, I would hear them singing those songs to themselves. So I knew that it was sinking in. And then, of course, when we heard those hymns at church, they would actually start singing along at church, which was a really beautiful moment for me because that's not something that they'd done before. So again, it was that really simple process of almost speaking or singing the words with them as my echo, and then listening to the song together and inviting them to join in wherever they knew the words. None of my kids are reading well enough yet in order to be able to read the lyrics and sing along. So it's really important for us to go through that step so they actually can hear the words clearly so that they know what's being sung. So what kind of music do you get? This is really tricky because a lot of times with the YouTube versions, they're just too fancy. It's harder to sing with a lot of people singing in chorus or singing different parts, or it'd be a soloist who's really fancy and has a lot of trills and fancy bits. And I really have found that something that's very simple is a lot easier. So I needed something that was simpler and more straightforward and just easier to sing along to. And I was really excited to find that in Nathan Drake from Reawaken Hymns. So he has produced loads of hymns. He uses modern instrumentation, which I appreciate, but he sings the songs and the melodies pretty much as written. They don't get super fancy, but they're really nice to listen to, and they're really easy to sing along with, which is exactly what my kids need. And it's obviously that he has a huge heart for passing on the heritage that we have in this beautiful music. And so it's really nice to be using music that's produced with that in view, of really passing this on to the next generation. So Nathan Drake does not have all of the Ambleside Online hymns. And so I've made the decision here that we are actually just going to learn all of the hymns on his studio album, which is called the Modern Hymnal. So the reason why I've decided to veer off of the AO path is that the hymns on this album are more likely for my kids to hear in church or to hear around in general. And I really want to win my kids to hymns. So I think it's important in this early stage to start with things that they know and that they're likely to hear. So at some point in the future, we'll probably go back to the AO rotation and get back into gear with what they're doing, because I want exposure to all sorts of music that I wouldn't find on my own. But again, in these early days, I think it's okay to say that we need to take some time to lay a basic foundation and to really be thoughtful about the songs that we're learning and why we want to learn them. Now, folk songs. I love folk songs. I love singing them. I think they are so fun. And again, it's just rich cultural heritage that we get to pass on to our kids. So I think they're really important part of growing up and an important thing to learn. But again, here, I've also decided to veer off of the Ambleside Online rotation because we have some songs that I noticed that my kids were really enjoying last autumn that we were just listening to around the house. And again, because I want to win my kids to folk songs, I want them to find them interesting and fun and enjoyable. And so I decided to follow their enthusiasm and choose to learn songs that they were a little bit familiar with and that they'd sort of shown an interest in singing. So these songs are coming from Pete Seeger albums and a couple that we've heard from the Ambleside Online rotation, but we're really starting out with stuff that they've sort of heard before that they have shown a little bit of interest in. And again, at some point we'll get back into that AO rotation. It's such a beautiful resource, but for right now, we're starting with things that my kids are a little bit familiar with. And even if we are following the Ambleside Online rotation, I think I will make it a priority to get the songs before we hit that term and let my kids listen to them and get a little bit familiar with them so that that interest, that groundwork is laid before we try to get started learning them. Now, with the hymns and the folk songs, the other thing I've done that's really helpful is to print out the lyrics and have them in that master binder that I showed you in a previous video. So I hate having to get my phone out. I hate having to look stuff up while I'm in the process of school. And so having those things printed out in my binder means I can turn right to it and I'm not messing around with my technology. I can just let my phone play the song and that's it. Now, before you print, it's really helpful to check the lyrics against the version you're going to be singing along with. And with folk songs, especially, there can be a lot of variety in verses. So I've chosen an MP3 that we're going to learn. And before I print those lyrics out, I listen to it and watch and make sure that the lyrics match what we're hearing in the song. Because otherwise, it's just really confusing. And, you have a hard time figuring out what to do in that moment. Now, there's a couple other things that we are doing a little bit differently. Now, in the AO rotation, there is one folk song and one hymn for every month. And the general idea is that every month you will move on and learn a new hymn and a new folk song. But one thing I noticed over Advent is that after about a week and a half, my kids got kind of bored of learning the same song. And I can't say I blame them. So for right now, we are sort of bootstrapping our first year together. At some point, we're going to start mixing things up by reviewing songs we've already learned. But because we're just at the beginning, we don't have enough in our repertoire to really be able to do that. So what I've decided to do is I have all 3 folk songs and all 3 hymns for our first year in my binder ready to go. And after we have learned the verse and the chorus of the first hymn and the first folk song, we just move on to the next one. So it usually takes us about a week and a half to get to that point of memorizing a verse and a chorus. And then after we've rotated through all 3 songs, we go right back to the beginning and we start learning the second verse and maybe the third verse. And then when we rotate through it all again, we go right back to the beginning and we start learning the rest of the songs. So basically, instead of learning one song every month for a hymn and one folk song every month, we are learning 3 over the course of a full term, and we are just moving through it in a loop, little by little, so that things don't get too stale or boring trying to learn the same thing over and over again. And again, when we're a year down the line and we know 12 folk songs and 12 hymns, and we can learn one song a month and mix it up by practicing stuff we already know. But because we don't know them yet, we're doing it a little bit differently this year. But again, that's the point. That's just one way that you use a curriculum to suit you rather than feeling like you have to do it exactly as written. So that's something that's really working for us, and it's bringing a bit more diversity into how we're learning these songs together. So I'd love to know how you are getting on with bringing these riches into your homeschool, how you find teaching hymns and folk songs, maybe if you don't play an instrument yourself, but I'd love to hear how it's going for you.